Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be with you here today, and thank you for the invitation from the organizers. My name is Allison Woodruff. I have to admit, I'm not the chief of the water sector, so I don't want my boss to think I'm impersonating her, but that's okay. I'm principal water security specialist. So I think a lot of the background on the water sector has been covered already. This one, okay. Great. But I'll just give you a snapshot on the state of water security in Asia and the Pacific. ADB produces what's called the Asia Water Development Outlook. The last issue came out in 2020, and basically we look at the water security in each of our countries in Asia and the Pacific from the 5 key dimensions. We look at urban and rural water security, we look at economic water security, environmental water security, and water-related risks. As you can see, the majority of countries, we also rate the countries on a scale of 1 to 5, and the most of our countries are somewhere in the middle. Luckily, very few countries fall at the very bottom. I think Afghanistan is the only one. But actually, no country reaches model, which is 5. Even Japan, Australia, Korea. The majority of countries fall in, our developing member countries fall in the yellow and green areas. So in terms of access, about 500 million people in our region lack access to improved water supply, and 1.14 billion lack access to sanitation. So there's a lot to be done to achieve progress and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Around water, access to water, and other water-related SDGs. So this ADB we're about to release our new water strategy. Its approval will be this year, and this sets out our priorities to address the key issues. I won't go too much into the background because I think a lot of my other MDB colleagues have addressed the issues in the water sector around weak institutions, again, I think around clarity and roles and responsibilities, lack of independent regulation, which leads to below cost recovery tariffs. Our levels of non-revenue water are around 50%, so quite high in terms of inefficiencies. About 70% of fresh water in Asia and the Pacific is used for irrigation, which is a huge consumer and putting pressure on water resources. And again, because of the lack of an enabling environment, we have quite low private sector investment. In Asia, about 90% of investment in the sector is public. So there's a lot to be done to create the right environment to bring in the private sector. Again, on access, I think I mentioned the statistics around access, but a lot of the growth in population is in informal, unplanned settlements, in urban areas, peri-urban areas, and so I think in terms of focus, we'll be focusing on trying to reach those targeted populations. Water-related risks, Asia is the most disaster exposed region in the world. I think the recent floods in Pakistan demonstrated that, where about 33 million people were affected. We also have quite low levels of digitization. Digital uptake in our region among water entities is quite low, so that's another focus area for us. And in terms of environmental sustainability, again, 80% of wastewater is discharged untreated in our region, so there's a lot to be done in terms of addressing that. We have 4 focus areas that we'll be looking at: sustainable water resources management, universal access to water and sanitation, climate-related risks, and productive water for agriculture and economy. This is a snapshot of our portfolio. So our water portfolio is about 26.1 billion, and about 650 people are benefiting from ADB assistance in the water sector. The bulk of our assistance in our portfolio is focused on water supply and sanitation. About 16% is focused on irrigation and agriculture, and then roughly 10% of the remainder is focused on hydropower, water-based natural resources, and flood mitigation. For climate financing, in recent years, we've contributed to about 40% of ADB's adaptation financing. You might have seen in Robert's presentation earlier, ADB has an ambition of raising 100 billion in climate financing from our own resources by 2030. And so water will be responsible for accounting for a lot of that. So we're really trying to boost our contribution to adaptation financing. And given that climate change is very much felt through water, there's a lot of scope to do this. About 85% of our projects have gender benefits, so specific measures to ensure women's inclusion to benefits. Our private sector participation has also increased. I should emphasize, though, this isn't non-sovereign. This is not the private sector investment, which is still quite small, but we're trying to bring in the private sector in things like operations and maintenance of water supply systems, irrigation systems, where there's low or no risk. And again, we're trying to promote digitization in more projects, but levels are, it's still a new and an emerging area in many aspects. In terms of regional breakdown, South Asia accounts for the bulk of our investments in the water sector, followed by Central West Asia, so 36 and 21% respectively. Southeast Asia and East Asia, roughly the same amounts, around 4.5 billion. And then we have Pacific, which is a tiny share, about 1% of the portfolio, and private sector operations are about 6%. And this is actually over the 10-year period of 2011 to 2021. So some emerging trends in the water sector. So climate change resilience and mitigation is a big area of focus given our climate ambitions in the region. And water is very much impacted by climate change. As mentioned, we suffer from too much water, flooding, too little water with water scarcity, and or poor water quality. So we're seeing, of course, sedimentation of water, freshwater resources, salination, a range of issues to deal with. Recent events have impacted water infrastructure, so cause damage to water supply systems that we've seen from recent flooding. So we're also looking forward into opportunities for water reuse, as well as greenhouse gas emissions. There's huge potential for energy savings in terms of promoting energy efficiency that we want to target in our sector. Nature-based solutions are another area where we are focusing. Nature-based solutions provide a cost-effective, quite flexible approach for addressing many water supply issues and adaptation. For example, in flood mitigation, as well as wastewater management, constructed wetlands, and so on. And then also we're trying to very much put a focus on innovation and sustainability. So at the moment, the bulk of our contracts, I'd say, are very traditional contracts where our borrowers hire consultants to do the detailed design under a project, and then those designs are then bid out to companies for construction. We're trying to build in more O&M, so recently Trend is trying to adapt what we call our FIDIC Pink Book, which is a standard harmonized MDB bidding documents, to build in an O&M component, but we're actually hoping to issue a standard bidding document for O&M at the end of this year to bring in more sustainability, because a key issue that our sector faces is sustainability. So ADB has an independent evaluation department, which assesses project success. And one of the issues that always comes up is sustainability following an investment and project closing. So we're really trying to bring in that O&M to ensure that the infrastructure is properly operated and maintained. We're also recently we brought in a standard bidding document for design, build, operate. We don't have too many DBOs, but this is definitely a trend that we're looking at. And as others have mentioned, PPPs. So we're relatively behind, I think, in the water sector in Asia and the Pacific in PPPs, but it's an area we want to promote. We supported a PPP project for a wastewater treatment plant in Uzbekistan earlier this year, and would like to do more in that space. So I have a couple of projects. Normally we present our sort of best performing, most innovative projects, but I was given instructions to present on more complex, challenging projects. So I hope this doesn't dissuade you from bidding. So please, this is not an example of all our projects. But I thought I would present our Melamanchi River water supply project. This is maybe a historic project. It's been going on for 20 years, and it's just recently closed. In Nepal, our loan is about 120 million, and there's additional financing of 25 million. And the purpose of the project is really to bring in a reliable water supply to Kathmandu. There's no water resources near Kathmandu to meet current, let alone growing future demand. So this project is interbasin transfer from the Melamanchi River to Kathmandu Valley. And to do that, a 26-kilometer diversion channel was built to bring water resources to Kathmandu. This project has faced a number of issues. So initially, it was approved around 2000, and initially in the first years, it was supposed to be accompanied by water sector reforms to bring in a performance-based management contract. But unfortunately, because of a number of risks, there was difficulty in attracting a private sector operator who was willing to come to Kathmandu and operate the system. And so eventually, it was decided to move forward with the works just to bring the bulk water supply, given that it was needed. So it took a bit of time to do site handover, resettlement, and then the contract was awarded. But unfortunately, in 2015, there were setbacks caused by flooding, which delayed works, caused some damages. And then in 2021, when the project was almost finished, there were massive floods and damage to the infrastructure. A lot of it's been caused by climate change, so the snow line is permanently lower than in the past, so that's triggered more flooding, more landslides, and so now ADB is in the process of working with the government to do a damage and needs assessment to see how the current works can be rehabilitated to address the situation. But I guess just wanted to highlight some of the issues around doing projects around the political reform issues, natural hazards, climate change. But this is probably one of our, if not most complex projects in the water sector. Moving to another extreme, which is small atoll islands, we also work in the Pacific, is the South Tarawa water supply project. Kiribati is a tiny atoll country in the central Pacific. The main island has a population of about 60,000 people, and being an atoll, it suffers from a lack of freshwater resources. The population depends on the freshwater lens, and in limited supply, and much of it's polluted. So this project will support the construction of 2 desalination plants under a design, build, operate contract. So looking at around 6 MLD capacity. These will be solar PV, because again, energy in Kiribati is very expensive. So there's a focus on renewables. And the O&M contract is for 5 years. And I guess just to highlight this project, has challenges in terms of working in an atoll environment. So everything has to be imported, essentially barged in. And then issues like spare parts become challenging. But I think on the flip side, it's also important to highlight that working in a small, remote environment can actually be quite transformational. ADB with the World Bank, and I should mention, sorry, this project is also co-financed with the World Bank and with the Global Climate Fund as well. But these projects can actually be quite transformational. A few years ago, ADB and the World Bank co-financed a road project in the same location and completely transformed the environment by having a new climate-proofed, well-built road. So I think this project will be, despite its challenges, be quite transformational in terms of providing 24-hour reliable water supply in a context where people just get a couple of hours of water every few days. So I'll just end there, but as Robert mentioned, all of our projects are listed on ADB's website. You can see our upcoming pipelines by searching our projects, and of course our procurement notices are all posted for you to look at. And I look forward to follow-on conversations through the one-on-one discussions which are planned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.